let's imagine that we're thinking about kind of the rapture story from Christian and even earlier Jewish kind of thinking. So if we were people like you and I having a conversation like this where we're thinking about the future during the Bronze Age, and we're noticing that as we've continued to develop more powerful technology, we have developed more powerful technology of warfare. So, as soon as we get arrows, and then as soon as we get arrows that can pierce armor and, armor and all those things, that there's an escalation of military capacity on all sides, and we can kill a lot more people from further distances than the records of previous warfare. And it's pretty clear that we're going to keep developing more projectile capacity, and, we're going to get catapults and then cannons and whatever. And we're also developing technology for accumulation, being able to store resources so that there's more of an orientation to accumulate surplus and the ability to extract resources, everything from, better saws to take trees down and better fishing technology to, smithing technology. And so we can see that as our technology is growing, both our capacity to kill each other and our capacity to unrenewably destroy the environment. And so we see that there are deserts near our civilization that are the results of our unrenewable agriculture and forestry practices, and they're growing. And that the military technology we're getting that's up-ratcheting is also up-ratcheting on the other sides. And it's not that hard to just kind of run the scenario and say, okay, if we keep increasing our technology and using it in ways that directly harm each other or indirectly harm the commons, we just don't get to do that forever on a finite playing field. And so there's a reckoning that's going to come with how we use power as we keep getting more powerful. And so we get the kind of purgatory story that there's, right now, it's only a few prescient people, prophets, that see that it's going to go this way. But there's a certain point at which the fact that we don't get to keep going this way becomes eminently obvious to everyone. And if we continue to try and use our power in game theoretic ways that advantage self at the expense of other or commons, and in doing so, we have to get some asymmetric power over the others seeking to do that. And the moment we deploy the asymmetric power, it gets reverse engineered and iterated on, so all sides are exponentially up-ratcheting power that is used to externalize harm. As soon as that becomes eminent, then there's this kind of great reckoning of, if we keep doing that, we don't get to keep doing that in a sustainable way. So we get something like a collapse in a hell scenario. And to get something like a not collapse scenario, we have to be safe stewards for our power. And we don't really have any record of the thing we call civilization using our power all that well, right? Meaning, we've of course used power to do some lovely things and a bunch of dreadful things, but if we take the distribution of the types of choices that we made as Sumerians or Romans or British or Egyptians or whatever, and we multiply the power of how we've made choices by an exponential set of capacities, that self-terminates everywhere. And this is where the mythopoetics of heaven on earth, or the consciousness change that would have to comes in, which is, if technology gives us something like the power of gods, we have to have something like the love and wisdom of gods to be able to rightly wield it. Otherwise, the misapplication of that power self-terminates. And so I think that metaphor holds quite strongly. And I think we can kind of think of it as that we're entering something like the purgatory phase, where rather than a few prescient people recognizing it, you kind of have to be not paying attention to recognize it. And whether we're looking at climate change, or we're looking at biodiversity loss or species extinction, or specific cases like loss of, pollinators, or issues with coral, or getting to, peak oil, peak nitrogen, peak resources of different types, or we're looking at the effects of exponential terrorism or exponential warfare, or the massive human migration issues that could be occurring, or even accidental externalities from more powerful tech like AI or CRISPR and biotech. It's not like there's one collapse scenario. It's like there's lots and lots and lots of them. And even if we protect it against several of them, all that does is move the curve of when the collapse happens by a tiny bit, because we're developing power on all fronts and using it in ways where we're advantaging some metrics, meaning either advantaging some in-group at the expense of out-groups, advantaging the near term at the expense of the long term, advantaging a particular metric like GDP at the expense of other metrics like biodiversity. And as long as we are advantaging some things at the expense of other things with exponentially more capacity to do so, that's going to be self-terminating across all of the applications of the power. And so, yeah, I think it is fair to say that we're moving into a place where at least there is a general sensibility of this that is increasing. And even amongst some smaller populations, like people on your, listenership probably, some deeper understanding that it's not one scenario, it's a lot of scenarios, and it's not the result of a few bad, dumb people. It's actually the result of the structure of civilization itself.